What's up? My name's Leo, and I just released my first ever horror game. In Loose Dog, your dog mysteriously runs off each night into the woods. Find her and bring her home. I made this game in 1 week for a game jam, and in this video, I'm going to show you how. The theme was Lost, and I was ready to go. I opened up a Google Doc and just started putting down a bunch of ideas. Just thinking about different interpretations of the word lost. I ended up gravitating towards a horror game idea because I'd never done one before, and I was like, hey, why not give it a shot? I actually pulled from life experience for this project. My family lives in a semi-rural area with a lot of trees, and sometimes my dog would get out at night. I had to go out there and look for him with like either a crappy low battery flashlight or just my phone flashlight. And it could get pretty damn spooky, especially in fall with all the leaves and dead branches everywhere. You walk around crunching, you hear something else in the distance. And, you know, having been scared of that in real life, I was like, I wonder if that would convert well to a game. So that's what I ended up going with. A game where you gotta find your lost dog in some dark woods. This game was a little different for me starting out than normal because usually I would be figuring out how to do a certain mechanic or gameplay loop or system. I was thinking, okay, since it's a horror game, I really need to nail the vibes first, because that's really the game. First things first, I just made a simple player that could walk around, look around. I decided to give them a little sprint, because I just like it when games have an option to run faster. If I had something scary, then the player will have an option to run from it. The next thing to do was to make some trees. At first, I tried a billboarded tree, like an object in Doom, but it looks kind of bad, especially when you walked up really close to it. And I figured you're going to be looking at these things real close when you're walking out there in the woods getting lost. Then I thought about modeling it, but I really don't have much experience with modeling yet, so it probably looked like a nasty, like, cotton candy or something. But then I had this eureka moment of, what if I took that billboarded tree and just made 2 more copies of it, so there's like 3 trees on one spot, then rotate 2 of them to make a little like cardboard diorama tree, and it ended up actually looking pretty nice. I upgraded the plane to be some crusty brown mystery dirt, dead grass, leaf thing. I don't know, it's retro, don't question it. It was finally time to really lock in the horror ambience. I made it dark, gave the player a flashlight, and right away, man, creepy. To really sell the vibes, I decided to make the flashlight a little delayed. So like when you look somewhere, it took a bit of a sec for the light to aim where you were looking, to try to emulate how it felt to use a flashlight in real life. And man, that was the sauce, that was it. I'm usually big on soundtracks, but this time around I wanted to really lean into the creepy ambience. So I just threw in a forest ambience, like royalty-free sound, and wow. Dude, this game's gonna be sick. Now it's time for the real fun stuff, the gameplay stuff. Since the game was about finding a dog, how would the player track it down? I had a quick idea to implement whistling. When you whistled, dog responded. At first, I was worried that it would be too difficult to find the dog with sound alone, so to combat this, I tried making an icon that would point out the sound's position, then fade away. Though I did have some trouble getting this working, and after testing without it, I realized it wasn't even necessary. Like, just the barking was enough. The vagueness of it really benefited the game. Players would be forced to explore and keep a sharp watch in case Pepper happens to run by. The next thing I did was make the map for the game, because I wouldn't be able to test anything until that was ready. I made a grid in Blender and just like went into sculpt mode and stretched it around to make a little low poly environment. Had to experiment a bit, threw it in the engine, walked around, found some things to change, rinse and repeat, till I got something that felt like natural, with like a little hilly but not too mountainous. I started placing a few trees and I realized this was going to be really boring and tedious. By default, Godot doesn't really have a nice way to place objects over and over in the editor. Like, I could have just spawned in tree by tree, but this would have taken so long. So instead, I looked online and I found a really, really helpful tool called a Godot Asset Placer. I'll put a link in the description. It's really, really useful if you're making a game in 3D with Godot. It lets you like get scenes and just click where you want to place them. You can place them along like the normal of a surface, so you'll like snap to a hill. Or you could also just place it based off a plane, so you can kind of find and adjust where it goes. And you can even randomize the rotation and scale. And this was really good for me because I wanted to make the forest feel more natural with just the same tree over and over. The forest was getting a little samey, so I ended up making some alternate trees, a dead one and a pine tree, and some little rocks to scatter around. I made a basic like start for the dog. It just started out as like a little pill that could walk around and respond to the player's whistles. I thankfully have some previous experience with 3D navigation, like navigation agents, navmesh, all that good jazz. And this would really be put to the test with what I was about to make next. I decided the game would take place over a couple of nights. This would let me reuse the map and also get the player accustomed to the forest before the real scary stuff happens. And now I needed to decide what that scary stuff was. I figured some sort of creature that was in the woods. I mean, that's just a classic. So I took inspiration from The Thing and Skinwalkers. What if the creature actually pretended to be the dog? You see the dog and you're like, oh, there you are, and you go to pick it up and oh god, you know? So I built off the dog navigation AI and made like the creature. At first it was just like built like a fridge. It was just like a big pill. And even in this state, I was actually really scared of it because I gave it the ability to follow the player. So I ended up actually making a daytime mode because I was so scared. And it actually didn't help that much because I mean, the bro was still following me. I experimented with the creature, giving it some unique behavior on how to chase the player, how to stalk the player. I knew the creature needed to be really scary, and I couldn't just use some like generic scary like boom sound or animal noises. I needed something like unique. So I actually ended up synthesizing my own sound. I then did some basic modeling. Around this time, it was actually very convenient. I had actually been assigned a lab in my 3D class to make a simple model in Blender and rig it and give it an animation, and I ended up being able to use that in the game. I kept the dog fairly simple, and for the creature, I took a kind of Quake Half-Life 1 approach, gave it kind of a gross, bulgy feeling with like spindly limbs. I textured both in engine by just throwing a simple like image onto it, since I don't really know how to texture that well. But for the creature, just having it the same skin as the dog didn't feel quite right. So I thought, you know, maybe like because it grows, it like skin like splits apart and stuff. So I gave it this kind of disgusting pizza patchwork, almost like it was too big for its own skin. Now that the creature had a basic AI and looked and sounded scary, it was time to lock in how it was going to act in game. The creature AI is broken up into 3 distinct states: wander, chase, and flee. In the wander state, the creature will act like Pepper, walking around trying to just act all chill. If the player gets too close, it'll trigger its chase state. The creature will transform, start making a bunch of crazy noises, and will start to run after the player. If the creature reaches the player, it will kill them. If the player manages to survive for long enough by running away, the creature will eventually get bored and enter its flee state. After a brief grace period, it will become visible again, now back in its wander state. I considered an interaction where maybe the creature would get angry if you whistled, but I thought about it more and it would actually discourage the player from whistling, which is bad because that's pretty much the only way you can track down your dog. One thing I wish I had done was made the creature a little more aggressive, but by making it kind of passive like this, it definitely makes the first scare really, really effective. Though I am pretty satisfied with how it came out, especially for a 1 week game jam game. With the gameplay basically finished and polished, I decided to take some time to make some nice menus and stuff. So I made story screens and little tooltips that pop up for the tutorial and other events. I used rich text label to make the letters shake around, kind of give the game an uneasy feeling. Then I made a simple fade transition, and I made it global so I could use it whenever. That's pretty useful. With the menus out of the way, the game was almost complete. It was just time for some final touches. I modeled a very simple house following a tutorial. Made a main menu, very, very simple menu. It was in Google Slides. Maybe that leans into the creepiness. I then tried to make a web version on the last workday before the day was due. Ended up running into a really horrifying bug where the game, nothing loaded. It was just the sky that got me biting my nails late at night. Turns out there's this like arbitrary render limit that gets reached on web, so I just upped it up, then it ended up working. I also had to add some audio latency because it was crackling and the game's about whistling for your dog, so I didn't want that to sound bad. The web version ended up being a little laggy because it didn't design it to be too optimized. But at the end of the day, I mean, people could download it if they wanted the smooth experience. So, with the game out, what are my final thoughts? This is usually something I like to stick to in general, but less is more. And especially with this game, I kind of just treated it like a short story. What's going to be really important for players, and how can you not like overuse it to keep it effective? I actually had a lot of scrapped ideas. There was going to be like a house interior. There was potentially going to be a gun, and there could have been a lot of implications with that. But at the end of the day, I actually kind of don't feel bad that I missed out on those things, because I feel like there's a lot with what the game does with so little that doesn't feel like watered down. Probably one of the biggest takeaways for me is I didn't realize I'd actually enjoy making a horror game, like a real scary game. You know, I like messing with people with my games. That's how I like designing levels and mechanics. I mean, the whole point of horror games is to mess with people. It's awesome. I also like how you have an opportunity to have a lot of nuance. The mechanics don't really have to be that technical, but if you deliver them in a nice way, people really appreciate that. You can focus more on making things feel like interesting without it being too difficult, and I think that's really awesome. Also, dang, I didn't realize how much people like horror games. Like, I already got a few Let's Plays. I never get Let's Plays. So if you're an aspiring indie dev and you're not too afraid of horror, you know, maybe give it a shot. So yeah, that's how I made my first horror game, Loose Dog. Hopefully you played it before watching this video, otherwise I guess it's not that scary anymore. Still, you should go check it out. Thanks for sticking around and listening to me yap. Peace.
You made me look bad!